Wallace. So before we venture into the meditation, I'd like to make a few brief comments, more general, about overall practice here. As I've been meeting with a number of you individually, I often hear you begin by saying, this was a really good week, or it's a really bad week. Like that. And it's very easy, it's very normal, but not helpful, to evaluate the practice in terms of how it's going. How's it going? It's like evaluating your practice on how was the weather last week. You have no control over that. He said, I had a really bad week. It was rainy and windy. It was a terrible week. It's kind of like that, How did your practice go? And then the commentary comes, well, my mind was really agitated, or I had a lot of excitation coming up, or there was a lot of drowsiness coming up, or then midweek something happened and it really, really threw me off. And then I had some really weird stuff, And so what you're describing is all the stuff that happened to you. That's what I call a hedonic evaluation of your meditative practice. It's normal, that it's completely understandable, and it's completely counterproductive. Because what happens to you is just beyond your control. You can't simply decide, I'm going to have a good day today, because today I'm going to have a very calm mind all day. See how that works out, It doesn't work that way, right? And so what I'm suggesting is, from now on, when you're meeting Meena, Glenn, I think he's probably softer than I am. I'm tough. He's a nice guy. I'm not so nice. I don't even try. Evaluate your practice eudaimonically. This is how you should value your practice for your whole life. Some people just are very fortunate. They just have just one wonderful thing happen to them after another. It does happen. There are people like that. They just, they go from Santa Barbara to Tuscany to the coast of Spain. Then they go up to Scotland. There are people like that. Their life is just a bowl of cherries. Bowl of cherries. There are people like that, And then there's the rest of you. So if you can evaluate your practice during the next 3.5 weeks, and you can evaluate your practice from now until enlightenment, in terms of whatever life dished up, your health, your mind, your body, your environment, whatever it dished up, evaluate it on how did you respond. Even in these last 4.5 weeks, you've received a pretty intense download of information. Even though I'm only speaking for an hour here, half an hour in the morning, it's a lot of downloads. I mean, I know the way I teach. I've been told repeatedly it's like trying to drink from a fire hose. By the way, they're all going, yeah. That rings a bell. So that's it. I mean, that's the break. That's the way it is. I'm not going to try to fix it. But there's a lot of download of information, which means you have a lot of tools, perspectives, theories, practices, methods, techniques, and so forth that you can use. So a really, really, very, very heartfelt suggestion that is, in your evaluating your practice from day to day here and from year to year after this retreat, evaluate it always not in terms of what happened to you, but what you brought to the situation. You can say this week, you can start out by saying, this week I found my mind was very agitated, and this is how I dealt with it. I really broke it up, and I tried to diffuse that by going out for very spacious, mindful walking. I diffused my awareness into the space while maintaining a real presence of mindfulness. I diffused that bundled up, that kind of that bottled up energy by just walking very mindfully, releasing into the ground. Spend a lot of time in the infirmary, supine position, full body awareness, releasing. And then you can say that did or not help, did or did not help. I'm not saying everything's going to be helpful. I do my best, but whether it's helpful or not, you have to see. But also break it up in terms of the four measurables. Not many of you are commenting. This week I was really practicing the four measurables in these ways. Shamatha by itself, Vipashyana by itself. This is very well known. Zen by itself is very well known. It's not and Mahāmudrā and Dzogchen. It's very well known. If you practice these and these alone, they can get quite dry. They can get quite dry. Not moist, not sweet, not nurturing, not warm. More just austere, disciplined, grinding away, working hard. It can get that way. Imagine a relationship like that. Like a romantic relationship, a friendship, where it's just kind of grinding away. Probably not going to turn out to be a long-term relationship. Right? So the more you can sweeten it with any way you can. Some people by nature are more devotional. More faith, more devotion, more reverence, and like that. It's a boon. Other people less so. But that doesn't mean they're worse people. It's just they undoubtedly have other strengths. But one way or another, we need to balance. We need to bring the heart, the warmth, the softness, the moisture to the practice. Any way you can. It's really important. Right? So that was one point. Now, as you know, we're now for the next three and a half weeks then, for the remainder of this retreat, we're going to be focusing very much on Vipashyana, and then going right into Mahamudra Dzogchen. There'll be a little bit, but not much more, instruction on Shamatha. I don't think I'll probably be returning to the four measurables, because we have a lot of material to cover here, and I've done it once. It's on the podcast. You can listen to it any time, or many of you are already familiar. But I would suggest, though, is that these teachings, right from Panchen Lozang himself, the teachings from Karma Chagmé, and so forth, the teachings from Padmasambhava, which we'll return to this afternoon, on Vipashyana, they really are, I have to say it, they're intended for people who have achieved Shamatha. Padmasambhava says in Natural Liberation, when he comes to the conclusion of the section on Shamatha, now stick with this practice until your mind is settled in its natural state. And he described what that's like. He said, now do this until you're finished. And then the very next chapter, then he goes into Vipashyana. So it's sequential. And he's saying, do this for one day, and so forth. But when he gets to the culmination of Shamatha, he's talking about Shamatha without a sign, and the culminating phase. He doesn't say, do this for one day, or do it for a week. He just said, do this until your mind has settled in its natural state. And if you're introduced to Rigpa prematurely, you'll likely just turn that into an object of the intellect and it'll become dogmatic. That's Padmasambhava. Panchen Lozang is no different. And so here we are, though. It would be very easy. I've done this a number of times, leading 8-week retreats, where I always do a Shamatha and warm it up with the four measurables. But that's not what we're doing here. So what I would suggest is that we've really covered the grounds, a nice array of practices. We've done a lot of practice. I think sufficient theory for Shamatha. What I would suggest is really, in terms of you here, in full-time retreat, and I know some people in full-time retreat listening by podcast, really continue to emphasize strongly the Shamatha. Within Shamatha, the relaxation and the inner calm, the composure, the stability. Keep on, you've got a pyramid here, keep on laying that foundation. The deeper the relaxation, the more durable, sustainable will be the stability. The deeper those two are, then you can keep on pushing the limit of vividness. And there is no upper limit. There's no such thing as being too vivid. There is such a thing as being too vivid with insufficient foundation in stability and relaxation. And then you get wired, you get tense, you get hyper, you get exhausted. And then you can easily fall into depression and frustration. Right? And so I'm not going to be talking a lot more about Shamatha. I did a lot. That was like 4 weeks, lots and lots of Shamatha. Keep on having that as your main course. That's what I would suggest. But we will be in the guided meditations from now on going into Vipashyana, right? Including this afternoon. There's at least one text by Dujum Lingpa in which when he's talking about stillness, the necha I often translate it as stability. Stillness is actually a bit better. And the vividness or clarity. On some occasions, I think it's actually Vajra essence. You can find it for yourself in Stilling the Mind, in my book, Stilling the Mind, that he draws a correlation between stillness and shamatha, and vividness and vipashana. You know, well, there's something to be said for that. Can you achieve shamatha with no vividness? Oh, no way, no, not possible. But he is making a point that shamatha means tranquility. The emphasis is on stillness, right? You are peacefully still. That's another translation of shine, peacefully still. Not still like this, still like this. Release of grasping, loose, relaxed, still. Noise down, signal up. You know? And then in clarity, well, that's where the real insight comes. And so in the practice we did this morning, it's firmly placed within shamatha without a sign. I've taught it many, many times, and I know a number of you received it from me. Where you're doing this oscillation right into, and watch the words, they're very important. You're doing the oscillation, the inversion right into your experience of being the subject who is controlling the mind, who's doing the meditation, the agent. Right? It's not quite Vipashyana, I'd have to say. Because he doesn't say, go in there and then investigate, analyze. He doesn't say that. He just says, go in there and look. Right? Very much like, go into that room and look. See what you see. Okay, that's still shamatha. If I say, go into the room and investigate whether or not there are this, that, the other thing. Oh, okay, now we're into Vipashyana territory. He says, just look. Just look. But it is looking with the question, what do you see? Okay? I'm going to relate this to where we're going very shortly. It'll be next week, I think, actually. It will be next week. Panchen Lozang, going to some classic methods of the Gelugpa tradition, but firmly rooted in Indian Buddhism. Tsongkhapa didn't just make this up. And Panchen Lozang himself cites Shantideva, where he says, if you don't see the target, you don't know where to shoot the arrow. And that is when you're looking for a negation, a simple negation, when you're looking for emptiness, what you don't want to do, which is really, frankly, it would be foolish to do it, is to go into your Vipassana practice and say, oh, I get it, I don't exist. The very wording itself should show how totally absurd that is. Who just concluded that you don't exist? If the one who concluded that you don't exist doesn't exist, then your conclusion is useless, because nobody made it. Right? If nobody did it, then there is no conclusion, which means the conclusion is invalid because nobody made it in the first place. On the other hand, if somebody did draw that conclusion, then the conclusion is false because someone did in fact draw the conclusion that you don't exist. So that's foolishness. That's like saying, I know there's a target out there someplace, I think maybe this direction, and then just shooting an arrow, okay, that doesn't exist. That's foolishness. The whole notion that there are thoughts with no thinker is foolishness. Because the person who's thinking, oh, thoughts have no thinker. You know, I think there was, the Buddha never said people don't exist. The Buddha did say, as he was passing into Paranavada, be a refuge unto yourselves. So if you don't exist, he just told you to take a refuge in nothing, which doesn't make any sense at all. The Buddha did use personal pronouns. People, he, I, you, they do refer to people. It's a question of how they exist, how we exist, not whether we exist. Because whether we exist is a silly question. It's like holding a cell phone in your hand and saying, do cell phones exist? It's just as silly as that. But it's not silly to ask how it exists. Coming back to Shantideva's point, Tsongkhapa picks up on this with extraordinary precision. He's like a brain surgeon, just with such precision. Identify exactly what is it that doesn't exist. It's not you, but what is it that doesn't exist? And in what manner are we deluded? That is, can I have a valid sense of being the person that I am? Sure. I mean, the Buddha did. And many enlightened beings, they know who they are. And there's no reification, there's no delusion, there's no ignorance. And their sense of who they are gives rise to no mental afflictions. It's not rooted in delusion, therefore does not give rise to self-centered attachment, craving, hostility, and so forth. There is such a thing as having a valid sense of who each of us is as an individual. But then, of course, if we all abided in that, then there would be no need for any teachings on not self, on right? Or the absence of self, not self, my brain is not me. That's a true statement. And all the constituents of my body and all the processes of my mind are empty of me, in the sense that if you look through them individually or collectively, you don't find an individual, a person, a self, an ego, an identity of an individual anywhere among any of the individual constituents of the body, the processes of the mind, states of consciousness, or all of them as a compound. It's just nowhere to be found, so they're all empty of me. And moreover, I don't exist outside, separate from the composite of my body and mind. But that doesn't mean I don't exist. It just means I'm not findable in that way. But what is it exactly that doesn't exist? It's not me. Somebody's saying these words. That's me. You know, raise your hand if you're speaking. That. What is it that doesn't exist? And this is where Tsongkhapa comes in like a brain surgeon. He's so precise, and he says, identify that which is to be refuted. And so we took a step in this, following Padmasambhava. We took a step in that direction this morning. You remember my wording, I said, as you're inverting your awareness in upon your experience of being the agent, don't tell me what you don't see. I know what you don't see. I've done this. That's easy. I didn't find me. Oh, whoopee-doo. Oh, how smart you are. You already knew that before you started. You know, come on. So, no, you didn't find you, but the question is, what do you see? Do you come up with just nothing at all? You invert yourself in upon yourself as the agent, and you come up with nothing. Really? Who just drew that conclusion? Nobody or somebody? Do you have no sense whatsoever of yourself as an agent? Does nothing come? Do you draw a complete blank when you think of yourself as a meditator, as a person who's controlling the mind? Do you have any sense at all of being an agent? And I think you do. What is that sense? What does come to mind when you think I am controlling my mind? Is there an agent? Yes, there's an agent. Just as in the triad of the informata, I hope that's the right word, that about which we are informed, the flow of information and the one who is informed, or the act, the object of an action, the action itself and the agent of the action, the triad, they all equally exist. And no one of them more than the other. But then none of them exist independently. Take away the other two, the one vanishes. Take away any one of the three, the other two vanish. So that was the point. So that was the point of this morning meditation. It was still right on the cusp of shamatha, almost ready to become vipashyana. And that is, when you invert your awareness in upon yourself as an agent, what does come to mind? And when you see what does come to mind, then you may ask a question if you wish. And that is, was that me? Was that an agent? Was that a person? Was it an image? If it was an image, was that an image of me? Or of something that wasn't me, isn't me? We often speak of representation. Neuroscientists say that all the time, that neuronal activity is generating representations of such and such. They have vivid imaginations. Neurons don't don't generate any representations at all. They're chemicals, for heaven's sakes. And I don't know how complex they are. They're not mystical chemicals. They're not magical chemicals. Neurons are not creating any representations at all. They're chemicals. They don't refer to anything. They're chemicals. It's almost like somebody being drunk. You know, they're chemicals. You have to keep on saying it. They're chemicals. Okay, electricity, chemicals. But that's all there is there, in very complex configurations, to be sure. They're not representing anything. There are no little people inside your brain, no little images of people inside your brain. There are no colors inside your brain. There are no emotions inside your brain. It's chemicals, electricity. But is this a representation? Now we're getting someplace where there are representations. The image that comes to mind, whatever comes to mind, is that a representation of you? Is that a depiction, a betrayal, a portrayal of you? It's right there on the edge, ready to practice Vipashyana, when you can see, how do you conceive of yourself? What comes to mind? What is your lived sense of being someone who gets stuff done? A real go-getter, you know? A doer, an agent, an accomplished meditator maybe, or a novice meditator. So there we are. So, okay. We're going to go into, again, pointing out instruction from Baba. This will be from Natural Liberation. It immediately follows his presentation of Shamatha without a sign, where he says, practice it until your mind is settled in its natural state. So you can imagine it's going to be a very, very different exercise once you've actually achieved Shamatha, to do the same technique, but having achieved Shamatha. But as I've said so many times, and I've always said the same thing, this is not just to be postponed. We don't postpone Vipashyana because we haven't completely achieved Shamatha. I thought of one meaningful parallel, and that is I was told early on by Geshe Ngawang Tagye, I also call it Kathy because we're old Dharma buddies way back, our beloved teacher. And I think I might have mentioned before, I'm quite sure I did, that when I was first learning about bodhicitta, I was just daunted by it. The notion of achieving, I come from a Christian background. Imagine a Christian pastor telling you, now I want you to develop the aspiration to become Christ, to become the Messiah. I would definitely pause. Like, am I the one? Am I the one? Are you saying I'm the second coming? Are you? Oh, you're not. Oh, okay. That would be a very daunting thing to say, but is that anything more daunting than, say, aspire to become a perfectly enlightened Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings throughout time and space? I found that daunting. I thought, whoa, that's way up there. Genla, give me a little bit, maybe give me a few decades on that one. I'm going to just try to get my act together to be a decent human being. You know? And he landed on me like a ton of bricks. Very, very gentle, loving ton of bricks, but still a ton of bricks. And he said, no, it's never too soon. You're wrong. It's never too soon to start developing bodhicitta. Don't let your life slip by. You could die at any time. I'm giving commentary here. You can die at any time. It would be such a shame if you're indeed drawn to this path, which of course I was. It'd be such a shame if you died without having even started to develop bodhicitta. It's never too soon. So don't think that way. Right? Oh, he said many things made a deep impression on me. And yet there I was, still a beginner. You know, no pretending about that. I started generating. Does that mean I became a bodhisattva the next day? Not even close. But the idea was there. As His Holiness Dalai Lama says, when he's been asked, are you a bodhisattva? He said, oh no, I'm not bodhisattva. I have no bodhicitta. But I have an aspiration. I have an aspiration to develop bodhicitta. Yeah, the Dalai Lama and me, basically the same. Thank you. Laughter a bit louder. That's better. That's better. Well, that's what I had back then, is an aspiration to develop bodhicitta, sure. And His Holiness, of course, speaking with his perfection of humility, says the same. But in a similar way then, I think it's very similar, it just struck me this afternoon, I think, that in Dujum Lingpa's strategy, where he says, and this is do preliminaries, okay, done. Now, move on. That is, you've turned that engine on. Not you're finished with them, but you've got that rolling, right? Your 6 preliminary practices, whatever, you got that rolling. Okay, we're taking care of that. You got that from other sources, I'm sure, because he's going to go right into Dzogchen quickly. And then he says, which is primary? Body, speech, or mind? Nail that. You have to ascertain it. If it takes you 20 years, do it. Really, if you've been really immersed, completely conditioned to believe in materialism, and it takes 20 years, that's 20 years well spent. Detox program. Rehabilitation. To recover from the indoctrination inside of materialism. Because it closes all doors, frankly. I mean, how many different ways you like to be a robot? Your mind doesn't exist at all. We have some neuroscientists saying that. Your mind is an epiphenomenon of the brain that has no efficacy. So the first one, you're a robot, a mindless robot. Daniel Dennett says that's what you are. You're a mindless robot made of mindless robot. That's a choice. You can have your mind as an epiphenomenon, which means it doesn't do anything. You're a robot. Or your mind is in fact equivalent to brain activity. Or you're a robot. So you can be a robot in any way you like, but you're still a robot. How exactly do you have a spiritual path if you're a robot? And this is unavoidable. There's no wiggle room there. If you're a materialist, then you say you believe that you're a robot, which means then, you're just a mechanism. And there's no Buddha nature there. There's nothing, you're an animal. You're an animal programmed to survive and procreate. And not to find truth, by the way. We know that by mathematical proof. You're not programmed for eudaimonia. You're not programmed to know truth. You're programmed to survive and procreate, which means monks are total losers, and so are the nuns. Dropouts. What losers. And so there we are. So that's a disease you have to conquer. And then you move on when you say, finally, hallelujah. Jump on the, Scientific Materialist Anonymous, SMA. It's a small group, but it's growing. A lot of support group. You need a lot of support group to get out of it and not, fall off the wagon. But happily, we have some neuroscientists, we have some brilliant physicists who are leading the way, showing what it's like to be detoxified. Right? You work for that, and then the very next one is examine the origins, location, and destination of your mind. Until they're empty, empty, empty. That's before you start shamatha. To my mind, that's very much like starting to develop bodhicitta. Even when your renunciation is just on its little baby steps, not much at all. Even then, you're just setting out on the path. So it already start developing bodhicitta. You haven't even set out on shamatha yet, already sow the seeds for vipashyana. Sow the seeds for it. So I think he's sowing the seeds of vipashyana and bodhicitta from the beginning. And then you get back to the step-by-step work of the shamatha and so forth, and you're on the path. So, strategy is everything. And Dujum Lingpa, judging by the extraordinary accomplishments of his students, boy, he had a strategy that worked, and then again the prognosis that it's for the future. Very inspiring. I find it enormously inspiring. Okay, enough of that. So now let's just go, please find a comfortable posture. Padmasambhava will guide us now in the very first phase of Vipashyana. And as you're settling, and I will tell you, because I will give a little bit of commentary to this, just try to clarify what he's saying. But it's in the section called Engaging in the Search for the Mind. And of course the word mind can refer to many things, right? But what I was just in this context, what he's referring to is mind as the subjective agent that is witnessing, that is aware. It's the noun. Word mind in Sanskrit, Tibetan, and so forth, it's a noun, not a verb, not an adjective. It's a noun. There is something here that is observing. There is an observer. There is an agent. The mind does many things. The mind is very creative. It comes up with all kinds of ideas. Wonderful ideas, terrible ideas. The mind generates ideas, brilliant plans, desires. It generates emotions. It launches armies. It starts wars. It finds cures for terrible diseases. The mind is an enormous agent. It's the creator of samsara and nirvana. That's pretty big, right? What is it that is apprehending? We're going to call that the mind. What is it that is the agent? What is it that is the observer? What is the subject? Who's listening? Make it very personal. Who's listening right now? Who's watching right now? Who's about to start the meditation? You are, but you're designated on your mind. If you didn't have a mind, you couldn't do any of this stuff. So it's the mind that's doing it, and you're designated upon your mind, right? So what's the nature of that mind? Let's find it. Okay? That's what Padmasambhava is going to guide us in. This is going to be a bit strenuous. It's not easy. And so what I'm suggesting is, and I mentioned before, I want to say it again, don't push too hard on this one. It'll be stressful, it'll be tiring, it'll be fatiguing. It's not easy, it doesn't come naturally. We weren't taught this when we're 5 years old. Okay? So it's going to be pushing it, it's going to tighten you up a little bit. Okay, for 24 minutes, that's okay. And then throttle back. Throttle back, go for a walk. Or listen to my calm, soothing voice for an hour. That'll set you at ease, right? Sure. Well, okay, after I finished. Then relax, take a walk, like that. But come back to your shamatha, assimilate, ground, relax, relax, relax. And then take the vipashyana like hot chili. Don't have a whole meal of it. But, have your nice vegetables and rice. That's where your shamatha is. And then just a bit of chili now and then to spice it up a bit. Okay? Olaso. In that practice, there's not much in the way of sense of ease and relaxation. Or stillness. He keeps on just hammering you with one question after another, each one designed to make you more uncomfortable than the last one. So it's not big on relaxation and it's not big on stillness, but it's very big on vividness. High resolution, sharp, acute, piercing, penetrating. It's definitely over in the clarity aspect. Right? The more shamatha you have, the smoother this is. The less shamatha, this is all abrasive and lots of wear and tear. Exhausting, I know. But we don't want to be complacent and just, oh, that was too difficult. Let's just practice shamatha. No. This is a hot chili pepper. Spice it up a bit. I can tell you a little bit what he's doing. You notice what he didn't do. We could spend the whole hour just discussing what did and didn't happen there. In terms of his instruction, what he didn't say is identify the object to be negated and now apply analysis to it. He didn't do that at all. There's no reference. I've never seen in any presentation of Vipashyana within the Mahamudra Dzogchen tradition where they do what Tsongkhapa does. And that is, first of all, identify the object of negation and then apply logical analysis to it. Never seen him do that. At the same time, these are not traditions that are failures, and Padmasambhava, and then Tsongkhapa himself said, after receiving teaching of the Dzogchen, these have no excess, no deficiency, and they are perfect as they are. They're complete. It's hard to say for Tsongkhapa, it's hard to imagine higher praise than that. Nothing excessive, nothing deficient, complete. He had nothing more to say. He didn't really need to teach Dzogchen. It was being covered, it was being done well. He went on and did what he did spectacularly, which was not simply doing Dzogchen. It was another track, another avenue, which also proved to be magnificently effective. And for people who really practice, it still is. So it's not doing that. And as I said, I've never seen it. Maybe it is someplace, but in all the transmissions I received for Vipashyana, the pith instructions on Shamatha, Vipashyana, and Tekshut and Turtgyal, never seen it. But here's a central theme that you find it everywhere, especially in Dzogchen. And I think it's equally in Mahamudra. I just haven't studied it as much, or practiced, or received teachings as much. And that is the 8 extremes of conceptual elaboration. 8 extremes of conceptual constructs. Exist or not exist, not exist. Born, is it born? Does it cease? Is it one or is it many? Does it come or does it go? And when it comes to Rigpa, none of the above. It does not fit into Rigpa as pristine awareness, primordial consciousness. You cannot. The intellect wants to devour it and say, "I've got a box for you here someplace. I have many boxes, but I have big boxes. To be or not to be, to exist or not to exist. That's a big box. Okay, Rigpa, step up front. Which are you?" He tried that. If you exist, the mind, that mind, but now we know what he's talking about. Not thoughts, images, mental space. Yeah. No, the mind that's observing, the mind that's the agent. That one. The subject in here, right? Coming up with all these thoughts and so forth. He said exactly what he's referring to. If it exists, you'd be able to identify it. Don't say it exists, but I can't see it. That's nothing, it's gibberish. Don't say it exists, but it has no characteristics. Don't say it exists, but no one can see it. Pointless, useless speech. If it exists, good, point it out. Tell me its characteristics. This mind that is observing, this mind, this agent, this entity, this noun in here that's coming up all these thoughts. Don't just tell me it's clear and luminous or clear and cognizant. No, tell me when you've seen it, the noun, the agent, the mind, consciousness itself, tell me what is it as it's standing there on its own. Identify it. Have characteristics? Good, what are they? If you say it doesn't exist because you can't find it, what is it that just didn't find it? Right? And then find that which didn't find. Because something just came to the conclusion. Don't tell me that nothing came to the conclusion the mind can't be found, because nothing can't find anything because it doesn't exist. Something that exists must have found that the mind is unfindable. If your head is not dizzy yet, I'll speak a little bit more. And so he's battering you. He's really battering you. He intends to do that. Battering you between the walls of existence and non-existence. And bear in mind, not some Buddhist definition. He's not trying to indoctrinate you into some Buddhist worldview with Buddhist terminology and so forth. No, what you mean by exist, and what you mean by non-exist, and what you mean by mind. Don't tell us what the Buddhist definition of mind. Don't recite definitions you learned in your study program. When you think mind, when you think my mind generates, is it just luminosity and cognizance it's generating hatred? That's pretty lame. Why would luminosity and cognizance generate hatred? That's a non-fit. Now come up better than that. I usually memorize that one. What is this? It's coming up with so many ideas and thoughts and images and joys and sorrows, hopes and fears and so forth. What is it? If it exists, you'll be able to find it. If you can't find it, then what is it that can't find it? And you get battered between existence and non-existence. Right? But before that, he asked, okay, I mean, it was cunning and devious. But put your mind to this. Put your mind to this. We say that in English, huh? And I think probably another language, something very similar. Direct your attention here. Put your mind to this. Put your mind to this. Okay, I'll do that. Okay, there's Claudia. I'll put my mind to Claudia. I'm now directing my mind. I'm directing my mind to Claudia. That's perfectly good English, right? It's like pointing my finger. Here's my finger. I'm going to point it. Claudio. I directed my finger. Describe my finger. Does it exist? Yeah, it's right there. Got it. That was easy. In a similar way, I'm directing my mind to Claudio, right? It's perfectly good English. Good. What is it you directed? Just directed your mind. Good. What is it? What is it that got directed? What's that entity? The object of your action. And oh, by the way, who did it? And are there two things? I mean, I'm not the same as my finger. I got that one figured out. Am I my finger? No. That was easy. Am I the same as the finger? Nope. Am I separate? Yep. Okay, we're finished with that one. Mind, you have two? Or is it a mindless one who directed the mind? How would that work? You must have a mind that directed your mind, right? But then, did it direct itself? Is it one? But what does that mean? Then why would it direct itself? Just do it. But no, I will direct. Doesn't this make sense? Doesn't it feel like I'm going to now focus my attention on Claudio? I'm going to direct my mind to Claudio. That means we really have a sense of that. I'm going to do it. Oh, I lost it. Then my mind became distracted. But I found it, and I directed my mind to Claudio again. Oh, but then I lost it. Then my mind became dull. Oh, but then I cleared it up again. I refreshed it. Refreshed, restore, retained. And I got it back on target. Oh, then it got distracted. But then I relaxed, released, returned. I did it again. I fixed that mind, that doggone mind, like a untrained puppy. But I'm training it. Who's training it? Do you have two minds, the trainer and the trainee? If there are two, why not just throw out the trainee? Because the trainer sounds like he's already got his act together. That would be the Buddha, right? The Buddha that's training the unruly mind of your samsaric mind. But in that case, why not just jettison one and say, I don't need you, I'm already a Buddha. I'm abiding in Buddhahood, I've got my act together, it's the mind that's got the problem, the samsaric mind. Why not just throw that one out? But maybe you have two minds. How does that work out? Do you really have two minds? Is there one that directs and the one is the directee? Two? Maybe there's just one. But then why do you say, I'm going to direct my mind? That doesn't make any sense. If I and the mind that I'm directing are the same thing, that's kind of like, that's not good English. And it's also not what we feel like. Oh, I got so exasperated in my mind. How many times have I heard this? Oh, Alan, this week my mind was really agitated. Gee, I'm so surprised. How could that happen? You've been here already 4 weeks and your mind is still agitated? I'm so disappointed in you. Your mind, are you as agitated as your mind, or are you less agitated? When you say my mind was really agitated, are you agitated? Or is it just your mind that's agitated? How many might there be a third one in there too? If you have two, there could be three after. There's no telling. So are you one or many? Are you one or more than one? Right? The mind, is it one or is it more than one? And he beats you up, he batters you against the walls of one and more than one. One and more than one. Which makes you feel more uncomfortable. And what he's getting at here, kind of obviously, is the mind is not really existent or really non-existent, and the mind's not really one, and it's not really two, and it doesn't really arise and it doesn't really go. That's where the origin and destination comes in. It doesn't really arise and it doesn't really go, and it doesn't really come and it doesn't really go. And so he's trying to bring you to an awareness of the mind such that your very awareness of the mind is transcending all of those fundamental conceptual constructs. That you're actually viewing your mind from the perspective of Rigpa and seeing your mind as empty of being really born or really ceasing, really being one or many, really existing or really not existing, really coming or really going. Seeing the mind as empty of all of that, and you're viewing your mind from a perspective that is primordially free and transcends all of those constructs. That was in one guided meditation. That's biting off a lot, yeah? Padmasambhava. Hola, so back to his later incarnation.